Hello everybody, and welcome to Escape to Books. My name is Sarah, and this is my review of the reads that I read in August. And this is also going to be a look at what I'm going to be reading in September. So we had a little eventful month. We ended up traveling from Kansas through multiple states to get to Vermont, where my husband is starting work today. So I got 6 books done this last month, and I'm a little behind on my videos because we were traveling at the end of the month, and I'm catching up now. The first book I read was The Humanoids, with a second book in it, The Folding Hands, by Jack Williamson. I have a separate video for this specifically, if you'd like to check that out on my channel. I really enjoyed this book. I listened to it on audio, and I really thought this would make a great 40s radio show. It was about aliens, it was about robots taking over the universe in a we're trying to save humanity kind of way, and not really doing it right, or as far as the humans are concerned, not doing it right. I really loved this. This is actually 2 books. The Humanoids is 1 book, and With Folding Hands is a second, but you can get it in audiobook, and they're both together. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was really fun to listen to. My next book, I try to do my classics in the beginning of the month. My classic for this month was The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. I gave this a 2 out of 5 star. Now, I know a lot of people really enjoy this older book. I had a really hard time with it, and I think that's why I gave it the lower rating. It had a lot of run-on sentencing. The time frame is 1800s-ish, and usually I'm okay with older books like this, but this one was really hard for me to get into. It was really hard for me to read and kind of understand what they were even saying, and I found the phrasing really hard to get behind. I don't know if it's just the time period that I was having a hard time with. The story itself, the characters were kind of, for me, they felt very two-dimensional. I couldn't picture them at all. The biggest character really was the house that they were in, and even that one was hard for me to wrap my head around. I also didn't find whatever the mystery was or the horror in this wasn't gripping for me. It wasn't scary or exciting. I wasn't into it, and I know that might upset some people, and I'm sorry. My next book was The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series, and I loved this one even more than the first. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. This is one of those instances where the second book is better than the first book, which is pretty rare. The mystery in this was more focused than the last book. The last book I felt had too many mysteries. It had like 8 in one book going on, and they were hard to keep control of. This one, however, I think had a total of 3, but it was more concise. They were all more closely linked, and it was much easier to read and to follow along with our elderly group of sleuths. You got your same cast of characters, and they just became even more lovable. The beginning for me was especially funny, and I really felt like it was like meeting old friends again. I don't want to give too much away on that because I don't know how many people have read it, but I really enjoyed the second book, and I will probably be doing the next book soon. So my next book was the final book in the Soldier Sun series, Renegades Magic by Robin Hogg. I couldn't wait to get through this series. Mainly because I had a really hard time with the main character through the whole series. I was hoping that this would change my view on the series, and maybe something would finally happen in the end. And while it did, it wasn't what I expected, and that, expectation really bumped it to its normal rating of 4 out of 5 stars for me. I have a separate video on the whole series as a whole in my channel if you would like to go check that out. But for me, I don't know if I'm going to be reading any more Hobb anytime soon. This was my first experience with Hobb, and while I'm not going to write her off completely, I will get to her eventually. I need a break. And I will probably get back to her series maybe sometime next year. So my next book is by Pierce Brown, and it's the first book in the Red Rising series, Red Rising. I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't really know what to expect with this one. I went in as blind as I could because there are a lot of people making videos on this series, and while I've stayed away from watching those, in the Discords and stuff you end up catching bits and pieces of the information, and I think I was able to go into this as blindly as I possibly could, and I was thoroughly surprised about what it was about. I did see a lot of Hunger Games type references in this. It felt very similar in some ways, but also it was its own thing. People who like the Hunger Games will definitely like this. And I hope to get to the rest of the series here soon. I'm going to take it slow, maybe do a book every other month if I even go that fast. I really liked the main character in this, and I thought that the way that he changes throughout the series was very interesting. Once again, I'm going to try not to give too much away, but I really liked this setting. It was interesting and way different. It hooked me from the start, and it kept me throughout the series. There wasn't really a dull moment in it. There wasn't really a moment where I was like, oh, let me put this down. I think this is for older teenagers, though. If you're going to have your kid read it, it does deal with death and kind of and killing and things like that. If your kids are going to be into it, I think it'd be fine, but they need to be older teenagers. My next book was The Kingdom of the Wicked. The Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. I listened to this on audio, and I think that's why I got as far as I did. The audiobook has a really sufficient creepy vibe. It'd be perfect for fall. It is for a younger crowd, and I think that's why I wasn't too into it. I was kind of bored through most of it, while the voice acting in the audiobook is really good. This really wasn't for me. I found it kind of mid and not a lot happening, just repetition, talk, and they don't go too deeply in about the lore and how things happen. They just kind of talk to you about it and expect you to be like, oh yeah, that, and it's not, it doesn't really come off to me, so I'm not going to be continuing this series. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think this would be good for someone in the younger teen range. Some YAs are a real hit and miss with me, and I'm kind of just dipping my toe into those, so, to see what I like. My last last book for this month. I didn't quite finish. I'm at 75%. I listened to most of it on the road trip, and it was The Passage by Justin Cronin. I am really enjoying this book. It is a series, but I'm probably going to leave off a review or a star rating until I finish it, so that'll be in September, so look forward to that. I am really enjoying it though. It's a kind of a new take on vampires, and they basically take over the world, and most humans are eradicated. So I looked at it when it got to a certain point as almost a spin-off, this would have been first, I think, of Attack on Titans. So think Attack on Titans, but with vampires instead of giants. I also thought this was really cool. Getting through the story is different. It's going in a completely different way than I thought. It deals with multiple generations of people. The backstories in this are very good, and I'm very thoroughly enjoying it. You're actually getting to know these people before you kind of step into their shoes, which I am really enjoying. This is one of the bigger books, I think, of the year. It's around 800 pages, so it is taking me a minute. It was a 35-hour audiobook, and that's how I'm listening to it. And like I said, I'm about 75% of the way through. So moving into our September segment, that will be the first book I finish in September. My next book I plan to be The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman, so the third book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I'm really excited to get back into this and see what happens next with the elderly sleuths. I expect to give it a high rating. Hopefully it doesn't slog after a successful sequel. My next book is going to be The Black Dahlia by James Ellroy, the first book in the LA Quartet. Now, I've been told that this series is very heavy. I had this book recommended to me by someone on Likewise, and I was going to let them know when I'm starting, so hey, I'm going to start the series, like I said, in September. I'll read The Black Dahlia and decide whether or not I will continue with the series. It all sounds very good, so I have high hopes for it. It will be my third book of this month, and I can't wait to get started with this one. My classic for this month, which I'm not starting at the beginning of the month, I picked Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I asked on Likewise for people to give me smaller, standalone classics, and this was one of the ones that were given to me in that list. So I'm just going to start from the bottom and kind of work my way up in that list. And so The Great Gatsby. I didn't read this in high school. I didn't have the AP class that some others did to read this. I also haven't watched the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I will probably do that after I finish this, depending on how my rating goes. I know a little bit about it just because, you've seen trailers for the movie, and I had friends in high school who were reading it. I don't really remember if they liked it or not, but I'm gonna go ahead and dip my toe into it and see how it goes. And my last book, I'm only reading 5 this month because I'm already kind of behind, is going to be a newer horror that is going to be The Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak. I looked up horror in my Libby, and this was one of the first ones that popped up. I read the blurb. It sounded pretty interesting, so I'm like, okay. I picked a horror because, we're getting closer to Halloween, and I wanted a little standalone that I could read that's not a massive series book. I seem to have a lot of those this month, so far 3, because The Passage is a series as well. So you got The Passage, I have Thursday Murder Club, and I'm starting the LA Quartet. So I've got 3 series going on, and then The Great Gatsby, and then this. So I've got 2 standalones. I'm looking forward to seeing how far I can get. I'm hoping that now that we've settled down in our new area, that I will be able to bang these out. I will not probably be using the library here in Vermont. It is a little stressful. We are really close to the New Hampshire border, and their downtown area is where their library is here, and you gotta pay for parking, and it's not really a very nice looking area, so I'm probably not going to be using the library. I'm going to be mostly reading on my phone and listening to Libby, probably for this foreseeable future. But I will be putting in my video the pictures of the books as I do them, and I'll probably be throwing in some books that I have in my collection that I haven't read yet, that I have here in the RV. So, because 1, I need to read them, and 2, like, I have physical copies. So if I need a break from my phone, I will be moving to those. That is it for my August and September. What does yours look like? If you would like to leave a comment or like, subscribe, do what you gotta do. What kind of horror books are you reading? Are you getting ready for in Halloween? I really look forward to seeing your comments, and as always, let's continue reading.